DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Rugby as you know it, Super Rugby is back this weekend. I'm excited. I hope you are too. Tony Jonson from Sky Sport is going to be calling these games right across the competition. TJ, thanks for joining us again. We're going to go through all the teams. We've got a bit of rugby news to talk about. And you're kicking off with the Blues versus the Chiefs, a replay or repeat of last year's final. What a cracking game that Saturday night.
Great game to start the season. And I was actually looking at tickets. Tickets are selling well for it, so there's obviously a bit of a buzz about it. The Blues start as defending champions. It's the first time in a full sort of Super Rugby competition. They've done that since, 2004, something like that. That's right. Yep. So all set up. It's a great rivalry, this one. And the weather's looking good, so I'm looking forward to the start of Super Rugby this year because there's been a few changes, bit of movement here and there, a few new, I think, interesting law variations that I think should have a positive effect, and of course a fantasy. Yeah, and look, it's not for me. I have enough turmoil in my life with my real teams, let alone a fantasy team. But I know that a lot of people have been jumping on this, which is excellent. I mean, good on New Zealand Rugby again for realising that this is a part of it, and especially the engagement for the young folk. This is what they like doing. And you yourself have a fantasy team? Yeah, look, it's more the new Super Rugby entity. We've got a new, independent Super Rugby board now, and I think it's a positive move because there needs to be some independence in the way it's governed. And this is one of the things they've come up with. They're going to have a Player of the Year as well. But fantasy rugby, and it is up and running. There were some worries whether it was going to be. So you've got a budget of X million dollars, and you've got to pick a team within that budget. I've had a crack at it. The good thing is we're being told now, and we had this in the NPC last year, and it was great, teams should be out Wednesday afternoon. They're telling the teams, you've got to have your teams out Wednesday. Don't change your team on Monday. Wait until Wednesday till the teams come out, then make your adjustments. I'm looking for players that have got high productivity. For example, my hooker, Tavita Ikanaveri from the Fijian Drua, because he's dynamite, gets the ball in his hands a lot. So that's an example of the way I'm thinking. Okay. But different people have different ideas. They just want to pick a team full of their favourites. But it'll be fun. Yep. And if it's too complicated for you, Martin, well, you share the ride with me. I will be on your back, and I'll be hoping that every week I'll be asking you about your team and how we are doing in the fantasy league. Okay. Before we get into Super Rugby as well, and we're going to be talking about this throughout the podcast today. It's a real worry, this Ineos spat that's going on with the NZR. I don't think NZR have done anything wrong here. Unfortunately, they've ended up on the wrong side of this. And when you've got these billionaires who are used to getting their way, Tony, in absolutely everything that they do, I think this is probably a power play from Ratcliffe where hopefully they settle out of court and don't have to go through a long legal process. Yeah, there was always a bit of a risk with this one. When you're presented with that sort of money, for the amount of space that they were giving up on the strip, it's very hard to say no. And you're talking millions on millions. And the risk to me was more initially about the public perception, because it is a petrochemical company at a time where the world's kind of turning on that sort of thing. Yep. And if you believe the reports that are coming out of the UK, that may have been a factor in it. The EU, some of the crackdowns they're having in terms of companies like this, they had to close down, for example, a plant in Scotland, affected the livelihoods of about 700 people not so long ago. And he's saying that there is less money. I mean, this is a guy who, he's in America's Cup, he's in cycling, Manchester United. Obviously that's a dodgy investment. Obviously he's not repairing the roof at Old Trafford, is he? But the thing is, this is where it doesn't quite add up, because he bought another big chunk of Manchester United last year. Now he's saying he hasn't got so much money to fulfil his obligation with New Zealand Rugby. But you're right. I think the last thing New Zealand Rugby can afford to do is get into a legal stoush with this guy. Perhaps this is why the plays come. But if it goes to court, it'll drag out forever. It'll be ugly, it'll get messy, and in the end, it'll be costly. And so they've got to try and find a way. It might be less exposure for less money, whatever it is. But I think that is the risk that you take when you get involved in sponsorships like that.
Super Rugby then. So when we're talking right now, we don't know the teams. They are coming out this afternoon. The podcast normally lands around about 4:30 for you. You've got a bit of an inside word, but what you want to do is go through, Tone's going to go through all the teams for us in terms of players that you're looking out for, changes that have been made, prospects for the season. Let's start at the very top then with the New Zealand sides. We're going to do the 5 sides obviously, and MP, look at MP as well, but it's got to be the Blues to start with, because this is a team that now has to do something they haven't done since 96, 97, which is win a title. And look, the Chiefs did it, the Crusaders did it year upon year, but win it and then win it again.
I think they've got the credentials to do it. They've got the blueprint to do it, and they get Beauden Barrett back this year. Obviously, Beauden was away for a fair chunk last year. They have lost Akira Ioane. Takes some physical force out of the team.
Experience as well, a lot of experience.
Yeah,
there.
Bryce Heem is another one. Soani Vakena, who's gone down south, so that they lose a little bit there. But generally, to me, this is a pretty solid and settled squad, and I think the formula won't change.
You're talking about the way that Vern has got them playing, which was unlike what we saw of the Blues for years, wasn't it? Just very direct.
Beautifully brutal.
Yeah, and a really simple game plan.
Yeah. And I think his greatest achievement was getting the team to buy into it, because that's not the natural inclination of a lot of those players. But they did, and there was something about Stern Vern, the way he goes about his business, that really resonated with that group. The player to watch this year for me, well, obviously, we're going to be looking at McKenzie, we're going to be looking at Barrett, because now that finally the door has closed, well, for the meantime, on this Richie Mo'unga thing, that it's going to be down to those two.
To start the year for
what position they're playing in, how well they play. I'm hoping he's going to play a fair bit at 10 for the Blues, Beauden Barrett. But the player for me to watch is Hoskins Satutu. He was the best player in Super Rugby last year, certainly according to the judging panel for the Rugby Awards, of which I was one. He had so many ways of influencing a game, and then just the rise of Wallace Satiti meant that he didn't get those opportunities in the black jersey we thought he was going to get. This is going to be the year for him. Satiti's going to be out for quite a while. Here's your opportunity. And I just, it's a matter of how he takes that, how he grabs it. If he does, then I think he could be a key role in a Blues team that'll be hard to beat.
Do you pick them right now before the season starts?
They'd be my favourites to win it. By no means a dead set favourite. I don't think that's competition. It's impossible to be that confident, but I think they've earned the right to start as favourites.
We're just going through the New Zealand teams here, and I'm going to put the Chiefs in at 2 before the season starts, playing the Blues on Saturday night. Given the fact that the year before, after 2023, I thought 2024 was their year. They kind of played a bit like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, though, in the round robin. They weren't that convincing. Then, of course, they got really convincing and had that fantastic semi-final win. So they regroup again. So their playing roster, stack full of All Blacks, stack full of experience. Have they got what it takes now to, again, lift themselves to that level that the Blues got to?
Well, again, I think this is a team that's got a really good coach, Clayton McMillan. He's been sort of steadily rising up through the coaching ranks. I like what he's done with his team. To me, along with the Blues, they look the most settled of all the New Zealand teams, because what's gone in, what's gone out, nothing. Look, Tyrone Thompson is a loss. To me, this guy had something about him that I thought, with a few rough edges knocked off, could have been an All Black hooker. And so that's a loss. I'm sorry to see him go. Josh Ioane has gone as well. That takes a bit of experience and versatility out of the back line. But look, they get Brodie McAllister from the Crusaders. I think that's a very good addition. Jerome Brown comes back from Australia. He's a Waikato man, made a great impact in Australia. I think that's a really good addition to an already very strong loose trio, particularly with Satiti going to be out. But the players to watch, and I've got 2 of them. Number 1, Samasoni Taukei'aho.
I was just about to mention him. And he's actually already said, he's actually warned the rest of the teams in the comp. He says, I'm busting to get back out there, right?
Yeah, I love watching this guy play. I remember there was a game in Fiji a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I think it was, against the Crusaders, or was it the one against the Highlanders? I can't quite remember. But that was the game where you thought, wow, this guy has got the ability to change the momentum of a game. So, how well has he recovered from that injury? How long do they play him in games just early on? Are they easing him back? And, of course, the other one, as I mentioned before, Damien McKenzie. I think this is the year where we all know how brilliant he is.
Yep.
Phenomenal talent, but what we're looking for is that element of sustained control throughout a game.
Good word.
And that's perhaps the thing that was missing. For example, with the All Blacks last year, it wasn't necessarily down to him. Maybe he was a bit part of these little flat patches that they went through. And so to me, this is a big year. This is a great opportunity for him.
I want to see pragmatism from him. Because he's got all the skills, but I want to see him winning games, consistently winning games.
Oh, he'll do
team.
that. He'll do that. In fact, I've got him in my fantasy team at 10.
Okay.
And
there's a tip.
In fact, I've even made him a captain because I think he'll score points and stuff like that.
Can I also add Luke Jacobson? I think that this guy is he's been there or thereabouts for the All Blacks for years, Tony. And again, that loose forward trio, there is opportunities there for him. I'm not sure what's his best position, but again, I think that this is the year for him. If he can't convince this year, I don't know whether or not he's going to be around as an All Black next year.
First of all, I don't think it matters what position he plays in because he's good, whether it's 6, 7 or 8. And he's so direct. He's really strong. He's a terrific leader of the team. He's definitely another one to watch. He'll be part of it. He provides great value for whichever team he plays for, and that's at the highest level included.
All right, Hurricanes fans, start throwing whatever it is at me. I'm picking the Crusaders at 3 here. I just can't see this team having back-to-back terrible years, and with the Hurricanes, with the injuries that they've got to start the season, and some of them have just been so unfortunate. To lose a player at training with a busted ankle is just hideous. And when they name 4 co-captains because of injuries, so I'm going to park the Hurricanes at my 4th place New Zealand team at the moment and put the Crusaders at 3 because I expect them to be the Crusaders.
Well, they crashed last year. I guess the question is, how much did they burn? The interesting thing to me about the Crusaders is the amount of movement, uncharacteristic, and what has happened is that there's actually a lot of veteran experience has gone from the team. I think that the time has come, and look, it wasn't that they've been dropped. It's just that they've either retired, they've moved on. So there's no Crotty. There's for once there's no Franks anywhere near a Crusaders team.
No Whitelock.
No Whitelock obviously. Willie Hines, another one who's gone. Joe Moody. So these are players who've been a big part of this dynasty that they had. They've also lost Zach Gallagher to the Hurricanes. Fergus Burke, of course, has gone off to Scotland. So, and in comes James O'Connor.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't exactly effusive about this move when it happened. I kind of get it in a way, though. They've tried out various players in that number 10 jersey, but they need some experience there. This is a huge opportunity for him to show that he
wants to get into the team to play the Lions, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he can do it via he'll have a good pack in front of him. It doesn't matter if some of those names are missing. They're still going to have a very good pack. They always do. It's just something you just write down in ink right from the word go. The Crusaders will be strong up front, and he gets, the ride behind them. And it's on and off the field where everyone's going to be watching.
Because he's got to fit into that whole Crusaders ethos thing, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he's had his moments off the field and everything else.
Checkered career, there's no question.
Is he going to be a team player? Has he matured enough to fit into what the Crusaders want from him?
The word was in the pre-season games that he played, when he came on, he immediately brought that control, authority, experience, bit of calm. He's always been had a sort of a laid-back sort of air about him. But as I say, if he treats this as a great opportunity and a point to prove, then that could be a big factor in a comeback year for the Crusaders. I haven't got them to win, but as long as they've got that big bloke wearing that jersey in the second row, Scott Barrett, who's just year in year out amongst our best 2 or 3 players. Then they've got to be a chance. I think he's just one of the best players in the world, Scott Barrett.
And Rob Penny, I like Rob, but when it comes down to this job, it's about winning. And last year, he knows he's on thin ice if they start off like that again. So that it's a fascination watching this team, isn't it? Because normally over the last so many seasons, we'd start Super Rugby and go, oh, God, it's them again. Right?
Well, I think that's the beauty of it, and that's the thing that makes it so... It's fascinating because there is a bit of uncertainty for once that we have not seen really for a long, long time. Even in that barren time for them when they were always there but they didn't win the titles after Robbie Deans left, but you just knew they were going to be a factor. Last year they really weren't that much of a factor. And so, which way does it go? That's a space.
It's a great storyline, isn't it?
Really going
Hurricanes at 4. No disrespect to Jamie's Highlanders, who I want to talk about as well, because we had him on the program, and they got a lot of young talent there. But let's talk about that Hurricane side, where if they were selecting their A team, I would put the Hurricanes probably up neck and neck with the Chiefs and think, they were very disappointed, Canes, for missing out last year. But with those injuries that they're carrying right away.
Well, the other thing too is that they've lost some elite talent. I mean, Ardie has gone to Moana Pasifika. I think that's a great move for the competition. It's a great move for Moana, but it just takes someone so important, in every way imaginable. Yeah. His performance, his leadership, his mana, the status that he has in the game. So you lose him. Geordie is not there, obviously, because he's off playing in Ireland at the moment. But they've lost another couple of players too. Aidan Morgan going, I think that's a blow. Justin Sangster, really underrated player. I know how much he contributed to a great year for Bay of Plenty last year, so to lose him, that's a bit of a blow. They do get Zach Gallagher from the catalogue of locks at the Crusaders, and that's good. Will Tucker's another one, a good, hard-working player. So they get something back. And of course, sadly, they've had some injuries, and Brett Cameron out for the season. That's a real blow because he's a very, very capable player. But look, there's a lot to look at as well. The guy that I'm really watching is Peter Lakai, because I think the ceiling for this guy is incredible. We don't know yet just how good this guy could get. And that's the
opportunity that Ardie gives him, isn't it, by leaving? So
And Duplessis Kirefi, who is, I think he's a terrific player with his work rate and what have you. So,
also Asafo.
Yep.
Who with Samasoni, and then you got Cody Taylor. We got no problems at 2 at the moment, have we?
Well, that's and the dynamic ball carrying play, and he in the absence of Ardie, it's going to be up to some of those guys, Xavier Numi, and that they'll take a leadership role in that forward pack, which I think is great. And another player, just I really like the look of, been very good at NPC level, and I think has got the potential. I think as a 10, although we've seen a lot of him at 15. It's Harry Godfrey.
Okay.
You just love a guy who's not the biggest guy in the world, but absolutely fearless. And so maybe, I'm not sure of the latest status on the injury front, but, maybe an even greater opportunity presents for him.
Highlanders then, and it's a squad with only one All Black. But talking to Jamie Joseph, I said, well, how do you prepare this team? And he said that all we can do is physically prepare this team as well as we can to play, so that when they go out there, they know that physically they can compete.
Yeah.
And then he said, but the rest of it, you can't substitute big game experience. You can't buy big game experience. And he says that's what they're going to have to learn as they go along. He's making no excuses, though, about it. And I think that the Highlanders have a place as everyone in New Zealand's second favourite team, probably. I mean, we all want to see them do well.
Yep.
But in terms of their win-loss, whether they're going to make that top 6, I just on paper, I can't see that squad doing it. I would love to be surprised by it.
Well, the thing is with the Highlanders, that everyone expects them to come out and play with great spirit and be competitive and, knock over a few teams. But very rarely, in recent years, have people predicted them to gate crash, the business end of the party of the season. So first and foremost, having Jamie as coach, that's points on the board as far as I'm concerned.
You go back history at Marlborough with his old man
Dad,
playing. That's right.
Jim Joseph, So, look, I'm not making any bones about it. He's a bit of a favourite of mine, Jamie Joseph.
Yeah, with all of us. We all know he's a hard taskmaster, but he's also a decent guy, a really honest guy. Yeah. And I actually think he's got massive respect from his players.
Oh, yeah. And look, they've picked up some interesting young talent as well. Apparently, Caleb Tangitau, former New Zealand Sevens player, he's made the switch. He's gone down. He's been very, very sharp in the pre-season games. And I know you can't put that much on pre-season games, but when someone sort of stands out like that enough to get noticed, you think, okay, that's a good sign. Yep. Soani Vikena has come down from the Blues. That, gives them another just absolutely phenomenal ball-carrying hooker. And also, they've got a bit of speed on the wing. I wonder whether we are coming back a little bit around the world to the days of the small winger. Oh, we're seeing it in the Six Nations.
Pin your ears back, dude.
Yeah, and in that regard, Michael Manson from Southland, absolute flyer, whether he gets a chance. What's going to be interesting to me is the talk that Timothy Tavatanawai might play in the midfield.
Okay.
Because it makes a lot of sense, really, because he
plays in NPC,
but he plays like an extra loose forward,
a beast
over the ball. Yeah. I think he got more turnovers than anyone else.
Yes, he did, So he won in the Shield, didn't he?
Oh,
there was that turnover.
Yeah. Well, that's so typical of him.
Yeah.
And the other one to watch in this team is Fabian Holland, and I think we've talked about him in the past, Martin. The big man who's come over from the Netherlands. He's sat his tight because he had to qualify for New Zealand. We're not as badly off at lock as we thought we were going to be post Whitelock and Retallick. And he's a guy. He's a big, strong brute of a bloke. He's learnt the game really well. I'll be interesting to see how he goes. They have lost Billy Harmon, and it's sad to see. Billy deserves to go and make as much money as he can.
Absolutely,
because he has just been such a fantastic servant of the game, such a great leader, and a guy who just always played with, total commitment, but absolute dignity as well off the field. I thought he, outstanding. He goes. And the other one amongst the players that have departed, Pari Parkinson, a guy that I always sort of thought, wow, the potential was always there. And it, for one reason or another, a lot of injuries, etc., it just never quite materialised. So they've certainly lost a bit. Mm-hmm. They usually do. Not as many as they lost before the last season. But, I know this almost sounds like a cliche, but anyone who takes them lightly, they do so at their peril.
Let's finish with MP then. Last year, 3 wins, and they've kind of increased that every year, I think, by 1. Again, I don't expect them to make the playoffs. It would probably be a miracle if they did. But Ardie Savea is going to make them worth watching every single weekend, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's going to lift those players around him, because that's what happens when you get a world-class player like that playing for you. You're going to look at him and follow him. So I'm really fascinated again by them this year.
Yeah, look, what I'm going to say is I think they need to take another step, because it's time to make a mark. Yes, it's been a difficult road for them so far, that the results have been sparing, and I think this is the year that they have to make a bit more of an impact in terms of results.
They've got to knock off one of the big boys, don't they? Yeah, that would be brilliant if they did.
And also, I think in terms of the crowd, there hasn't quite been the engagement of the level that we thought there would be. Look, everyone wanted this team in the competition, and everyone wants them to stay there. Mm-hmm. There's been a certain amount of goodwill there towards this team. I think this is a year where I think they do need to make more of an imprint, just in terms of the results. But they've made a couple of moves that really give you hope that is going to happen. Obviously, Ardie, one of the best players in the game.
Yeah, in the world, yeah.
One of the most influential players who will pick everything up. And also Garden Bishop. With Christian Leali'i finally calling it a day after a fantastic career, and what a brave, wonderful man he has been in the game, Christian. But Garden Bishop, very good to step into that role. And they've picked up big Pone Fa'amasili from the Melbourne Rebels as well, which gives a real bit of power and size to their forward pack. So I think I'm expecting more progression from them this year, more of an impact from Moana Pasifika. And, they're playing at North Harbour Stadium this year. There might be a bit of a risk, in that, but urge people to go along and watch them, because I think that, Ardie himself's got to be worth bums on seats.
Finally, just for yourself, mate, before you go, here we go again. I don't know what season this is for you. It must be 25. It must be close to 30 maybe. When you left TRN when we were working together, it was about 99 or 2000.
99 I went to Sky.
Yeah.
So this 25, is that 27?
Almost
99,
yeah,
0,
over
and
quarter
then
of a century,
25. Yeah, 27 years. But also, I mean, I remember 96 as well. I was calling on the radio then, and how we ventured into Super Rugby, not knowing quite what it was going to be. We were excited about it. We weren't quite sure what it was, and we ended up with the crowds queuing down the street for tickets to the final between the Blues and the Sharks. So next year, the 30th year of Super Rugby,
yep.
and I know a lot of the franchises or clubs, as they like to call themselves, now are doing things around that. But it's a huge year for the competition because there are new deals to be done. But look, I thought Super Rugby was really good last year, and I have no doubt. And people will say, "Oh, you're just waving the flag for." I'm not. It
was a great comp. If you didn't think so, you missed out last year. If it was an excellent comp last year. I can't wait for Friday night, mate. Valentine's night, going out at 5:30 for dinner. Why is that? She said. Well, we've got another love on the TV at 7:05.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, as I said to you last week, mate, every day is Valentine's Day in our house.
DSPN.